everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today, again, is Megan Shane. She's a
Hello.
founder of Intentional Healing, Counseling, and Coaching, holistic clinical trauma psychotherapist, EMDR, and somatically trained. She's also a perinatal and grief specialist. So, this is my brief introduction to Megan, as I always do. But my favorite question to ask my guests is that fundamental question of who they are in their own words. So,
Mm,
who is Megan in her own words in this moment, in this present moment?
yeah. I am a mom and I love being a mom. I love watching my kids make mistakes and learn and
Yes.
grow,
Ah,
um, and being there for the high points and being there for the low points. So that's huge to me. I'm a partner doing my best to show up for myself, so that I show up for the people around me in the way that I want to. I'm a professional. I love what I do. I feel excited to share my knowledge and learnings along the way to help other people along their journey. I'm a friend and a community member
mm,
and a daughter and a sister. But most of all, just I'm on a healing journey, to find and know and internalize my truth as I learn more and more of what it is.
yeah.
And I do feel like it's a journey. Like I know myself better today than I did yesterday, than I did 5 years ago. But I'm excited to discover like who I am 2 years from now, and how that's shifted and
Mm,
where I've grown and stretched and struggled. And so
mm,
that's who I am.
yeah.
Oh, and
Wow.
I'm also a mom to
Yeah.
lots of dogs, which bring me just joy and
Yes, right.
so.
Yes. How can you forget that, right?
Mhm.
Right, the dogs. I remember the pictures. I think I mentioned that. It just puts a smile on
Yeah,
everybody's face. It's amazing
yeah.
how animals. And speaking of animals, I guess this is a good moment to ask you a question about this space that you have created, that you are creating,
Mhm.
for nurturing healing, that space for healing. You call intentional. So talk to me for a moment about intentional healing.
Mm. Coming to that name was really important for me, to notice that we all have choices. And part of that choice is to
Yeah.
stay kind of where you are or to venture out and go into healing. And it does take a lot of intention because in order to do that, we have to come to the
Mm,
present moment and we have to decide that we're going to like sit in the hard to and feel the emotion and the experience to learn and grow and get out on the other side. So, the house where we see clients is the house that I grew up
yeah.
in, which had its joys and it also had its challenges. And my mom was really sick when I was young, and there was a lot of separation when I was a baby, and that just caused some hurdles that I've had to notice have lived in my body for a long time. And so, and with stressors comes some dysfunction. There were lots of high
Oh,
points,
yeah.
but also
Yeah.
a lot of stressful points of dealing with um, life in general as it came through for my family. So creating this space, um, and raising my own kids here in this home, and now
Yes.
transforming that into a space where we have clients coming, is really special to me. Our backyard, we transformed this past summer into a beautiful kind of Zen garden feel with
Mm,
spaces of intention to be able to sit and look at different things and experience different things and different parts of it. So that's what I've tried to carry over into not only my own personal spaces in our home that are very intentional in like what nourishes me, what is interesting for me to take care of and notice, and
yeah.
to like we talked about last time, like healing healing colors and using intention within the spaces to promote not only my growth, but helping others like identify, like, would this work for you? Where do you set up spaces in your environment so that you can take time and be with yourself in a way that is nourishing, that brings joy as you're also looking at hard places.
Yes. You see, I love that description of intentional healing
Mm.
in intentional spaces, healing spaces, right? Creating an environment that will support us in our healing journey.
Mhm.
So there's something about that. It's almost like uh, just by being aware of our own kind of the way we navigate our own life in a sense of our environment, it can tell a lot. It has so much information right there, the way
Yeah,
we
it does.
rearrange and rearrange our environment. And then also being attracted to heal, to do healing work in spaces like you have created, that says a lot too. Like it really caught my attention looking at the pictures that you sent me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have this? I think I mentioned before this thing that swings. What do you call it?
Yeah.
A hammock?
It's like, it's a big swing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that.
It's suspended from the ceiling and it's about 6 feet wide and it's full of blankets and pillows. So you just, are able to swing.
Yes.
And, finding those things that can be anchoring, that are grounding for us. So that was very much put there intentionally to be able to be a space of creating dual awareness as I'm doing trauma processing for clients. But also as I'm working, jumping in there and allowing myself space
Yeah.
to intentionally have that motion of movement that feels soothing and calming to my nervous system. When we go through the motions, right, of going through, like, just going rotely through our spaces in our life without really paying attention, those like healing colors,
Mm,
that's what I use to kind of anchor myself into my environment, to notice, through we're patterned, and running off of programs that were set in motion really young in our learning,
mm,
where we were taking in the depth of our experience in our environment and making sense of it. And so we sort of need to interrupt that a little bit, that autopilot that we run on.
mm.
And for me, creating those intentional spaces kind of disrupts that autopilot for me to come and check into the present moment, notice where I am, and move from there.
Right. Oh my God. What's not to love about that? Yeah, that intention alone, you see that awareness. And I guess when I mentioned that swing,
Hmm.
that caught my attention really quickly, it might be because something in me probably was like in need of that, my playfulness, that
Hmm.
really, yeah, that was inspirational just to look at it. Perhaps for that reason too, that I needed more playfulness in my life. Since you mentioned trauma, I mean, you treat, that's what your work is all about.
Hmm.
How do you, how do you define trauma these days?
Yeah, something that is overwhelming for our nervous system in a way that it doesn't get processed, right? And go into that long term memory. Whether or not maybe we didn't have the support we needed at the time, we might have had to have dissociated to withstand whatever was happening. So whether we were in like fight, flight, or whether we were in fawning or freezing, or whatever that is, a simple definition is too much too soon or too little too
Mm,
long. That can be like a way to look at it too. Like, something spiked,
yeah.
it overwhelmed, or is it that chronic, like there's just something missing? I'm not getting the attunement, or things aren't lining up. There's neglect, there's abuse, there's all sorts of reasons. But yeah, that's a simple definition, kind of too much too soon, too little too long.
Yeah, I never heard it that way. That's interesting to kind of reflect on that. Yeah, that makes
Hmm.
sense to me. So you don't make a distinction between the trauma with the capital T and trauma with the small t. Do you?
No, because if you have trauma with a
No.
small t over and over and over and over again, that
Yeah.
collective effect that it has on your nervous system, is every bit as impactful, as a big T trauma. And oftentimes, actually, those big T traumas can be a little easier to clear if they're not connected to other life experiences. But that's really
Mm,
uncommon for people because there are so many things that bring up core beliefs that we hold
right.
that are not true. And they kind of just go along that path and get all strung together. So oftentimes,
Yeah.
that big T trauma, people coming in for one specific car accident or event that happened,
Yeah.
we find we have to slow down because there's lots of little T traumas that are wounds that we've experienced throughout cultural messages, throughout experiences with different people in our lives, different things that happen.
Yes. What is the best way to recognize them, Megan? When we don't have, like, per se, those remarkable experiences that would be, diagnosed immediately as
Mm.
trauma. So, yeah, how do we know that we have been traumatized, that we are actually coming from that trauma space?
Yeah, I think, for some people, it might be that they're re experiencing in nightmares, that it's happening in their sleep, or that they're avoiding certain things or places and they're not, maybe even don't know why.
Yeah.
Um, or that they're having trouble with their interpersonal relationships and the same kind of patterns are happening again and again. But maybe there's not an explanation, or you just have that felt sense of like, there's something here, but I don't know what it is. Or, so there can be different ways that it shows up, but it's noticing, I think, first and foremost, where do you feel stuck or where do you feel out of balance? Are there beliefs that you're
Mm,
holding? Is that self critic like
yeah.
so on board, that you can't see past or weave through or settle that down? That there are things that are stuck in there, experiences that are stuck in our nervous system that are firing
Mm,
through images, through sensations, through smells, through emotions, through thoughts,
ah,
So I think just understanding, um, that you don't want to be where you are is a way to notice, that there might be some stuff underlying there that's stuck in our nervous system.
right. Yeah, that also makes a lot of sense. So it has a pattern to it. Usually, trauma is recognized by patterns. Almost my entire adult life, I lived from that place of survival patterns,
Yes,
always trying to
yes,
survive
yes.
emotionally, physically. It was always something, somewhere to get to. And when I had an opportunity to relax, then I would find something to get the nervous system kind of, let's say, not dysregulated, but
Mm-hmm,
aroused again,
mm-hmm.
because I was so used to that. The body's so used to that, the
Totally.
body mind.
Yeah, it takes a while for us to dial back down that nervous system because if we're used to that cortisol and adrenaline running, all the time, or if we're bottoming out, like that opiate release, within our
Yep.
system, it is, we're used to that up down. And so another piece of complex PTSD or PTSD in general is, emotional dysregulation. And so if we're feeling that chronic tightening in our experience, or, that can be one way, right, where we're experiencing that heightened arousal, or we're feeling that adrenaline rush all the time and our heart is pumping fast or whatever, however it's showing up,
Yeah.
that is, something that over time, again, in space and repetition, we can create those new neural pathways, we can clear those traumas, and then we can feel comfortable. I used to feel, I didn't know how anxious I was until I wasn't anxious. I had no idea what it felt like to be
Ah,
in a
yeah.
relaxed body. I didn't know any different. Um, But yeah, you can dial it down
Wow.
when we understand what's happening. That's the thing I love most about what I do is just educating people on how your nervous system works, what your brain is doing in a way that they're like, oh, I mean, you can have self compassion and an understanding
Yeah.
that just transcends into your everyday life in a different way. Like you're able to maneuver and experience yourself differently as you continue on your healing journey.
Right. I have asked before to lots of people here, and I think I asked you too when we talked.
Hmm.
Does he ever go away? These the triggers per se, the things that the memories. It's very visual. It is sometimes they are thoughts. Sometimes no, I'm totally unconscious. In a sense of I'm not aware of a thought
Hmm.
pattern that causes sensation in the body. So I'm wondering if it goes away, Megan. Does he ever go away, these triggers, or we just learn to kind of regulate it and to live with them?
I can speak from my experience more than the world
Yeah.
at large, but for me and on my journey, I feel like there are things that come up. For instance, I'll use myself and my partner as an example. I had a
Yeah.
baby part of me come fully online out of nowhere when his trauma, which had been locked up for many, many, many years, all of his life, came came kind of coming came through in with some gusto to it. He felt safe and
Yeah.
relaxed, and then his mind, body released, a lot. And the way he maneuvered through it, through his old patterns, activated the
Yeah.
baby within me, that safety, that it just was like, ah. So
Yes. Yes.
that caused me to take some time and some space to do work there with a part that hadn't had or needed as much work in the past. Like it was really quiet. That part of my experience was very quiet and wasn't interrupting, my everyday life. And so I think that there absolutely are things that might be around the corner that awaken another piece of what is under our awareness.
So my what helped me a lot has been helping me a lot. It's just to come from a place of wholeness. My healing journey has taken a spiritual kind of
Mhm.
perspective where it's almost like it was necessary really to come from a place of wholeness, completeness, no limitless,
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
then kind of look into the parts, the fragmented, kind of dance within the body mind. And that
Yeah.
really, really, it's something that helped to look at the human experience from the parts perspective in a more, let's say, peaceful way. It gave me
Mhm.
safety. That's what it is. The word is safety.
Yeah. Such a necessary component, right? To access what, for me too, it's that spirituality of knowing that there is wholeness in all of us, that we are
Yes.
born, right? We're born whole, and there are experiences that shift that, whether it be through our lineage
Right.
or through our everyday life. And um, but being able to go back to I am whole, and this can shift, and there's movement in there. Yeah, it's huge to feel that connection to something
Yes.
greater, something bigger, something that we're all experiencing, this humanness, this oneness. It's
Right.
a connection that way.
Yes. Right. So it is coming from that place, because for me it has been like a very real. I know from some people it sounds abstract, the idea of we are whole, because they don't
Mhm.
feel whole. So I guess that's a good time to talk about that, Megan. How do you implement mindfulness and creativity within intentional healing?
Yeah. Mindfulness is a huge part of trauma healing. I don't think it's possible to do trauma healing without being mindful, because you do need to learn to come to the present moment, to be able to kind of
Yeah.
baby step in and out of noticing and being with your current experience, um, with the intention of building that dual awareness of being able to be in the here now and being able to step into
Mm,
where we need to focus. But to have that mindfulness practice of whatever that is that resonates for each individual, whether it be doing exercises like stop, where you're stopping and taking a breath and
yeah.
observing what's present without judgment and then
Yeah.
proceeding along, or whether that is sitting in a meditation, for 15, 20 minutes at a time, whatever level of that feels okay. That doesn't feel accessible for everybody to sit still in their body. If
Right.
you have a lot of trauma, that can be super triggering.
Right.
So finding those mindfulness tools, though, that are going to be able to help us as we heal get into our bodies and be able to tolerate and notice and move through and be with what um,
Mm,
is super important. So that is absolutely part of the education and practice of of exploring what is supportive for each individual.
yes. You see, when you talk about being present to what is present, that sounds very spiritual, like a spiritual practice to me. I know it's a
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic healing
Mm-hmm.
practice, but sounds very spiritual. I remember somebody who said, define trauma as the inability to be present. That made a lot of sense to me. It's always
Yeah.
the mind just caught up in this pattern, right, Megan? Past
Yeah.
and then anxious about the future, but it never here, never in the moment.
Yeah. And at the point of trauma where we're inputting that trauma, our nervous system is out of that window of tolerance. It's out of that sense of safety and ease. And so, yeah, it doesn't get, if we can't
Mm.
grab onto ourselves and be present, then it is, it's inputted as trauma.
Yes, yeah. And you see, that doesn't help in a, like I mentioned before, in a society where we are constantly distracted or
Mm-hmm.
being expected, right, to do more, to be more. That doesn't help if we already are dealing with some, trauma, past trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about, I guess, talk to me about self care. Do you connect self care to self love?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think finding the self care that's right for you is the self love. It's taking the time
Yeah.
to explore and notice and try new things and go out of your box and put yourself out there,
Mm,
if that, to
yeah.
maybe discover that you absolutely love hiking, or you want to skydive, or self-care to you is getting a warm drink in the evening and going and sitting in a chair and spending 10 minutes journaling.
Mm,
Or it means that for me, self-love is getting into water,
yeah.
and that is a way that I can connect with myself and care for myself.
Yeah.
When my kids were small, it was getting in a bathtub. Now that they're older, we have a hot tub outside, and I go sit in the cold in the dead of winter here in Minnesota with a hat on and experience outside. So like that to me is the definition of self love, is noticing what you need
Yeah.
to give yourself the opportunity to be there for yourself in the way that you need it.
I love the I think I heard that before. I don't know if we talked about this, but self-trust too.
Mhm.
Trusting that even if we are not engaging in self-care in this moment, that we'll find a time that we will create that space. I work a lot. And a lot of times I kind of question that a lot because I come from PTSD. So
Mhm.
I'm complex PTSD, which for
Mhm.
those who don't know, I would love for you to explain that too. It's basically complex trauma being
Mhm.
repeated, right, Megan? Just
Repeated, yeah. Repeated trauma over a period of time, right? Or, yeah, exposure to traumatic events, whether that
yeah,
be through neglect or through abuse or through war, through cultural experiences, right? Wherever that might be.
right. Yeah. So thank you for explaining that. I talked to somebody recently about that, and I was reading her book, and she mentioned that she said that's she was talking about her own experience with CPTSD, that
Mhm.
she was always overworking, overdoing everything, and she could never really find time, for herself.
Yeah,
And then I was just reading that and trying to kind of not relate it back to myself, but then I couldn't help it. Said, wait a minute, maybe there are some patterns here. But then, there's another voice, another part of me that jumps in almost immediately and says, no, you find calm or find a way to relax your own nervous system within business, within doing something, within being active. Now I have learned to do that. And so I'm trying to kind of go deeper into it within my own healing work of body, mind. But
hmm,
it's just interesting to see how, like you said, sometimes it keeps unfolding and new things will come up, blind spots.
totally.
It's fascinating, right, Megan?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Trusting that inner wisdom of knowing, like, what is that balance? Things, when we have complex PTSD, that we get over adapted in some areas. I was really good at like reading a room at a tiny age because
Yeah.
I was always kind of assessing what was happening and making sense of what was going on. And so that is something that I notice when that's happening, and finding the right balance. For some people, sitting still can be super, super scary because maybe things start to flood in when there's quiet. And that's why, for some people, meditation, it's
Mm,
learning that pace,
mm,
and that rhythm for each person to know, like, okay, I can baby step into quiet. I can notice that this might feel reminiscent of when I was checked out as a little one, trying to maneuver, or is it that I am, able to, and I am able to do that more, like find peace and contentment. I used to be,
yeah. Yeah.
way more on the side of needing things to be a certain way all the time.
Right.
And now, I there's more flexibility in my thinking, but there's also more quiet in my body, and the quiet feels okay in my body. And so that's something that I've noticed, that for me, finding that balance, and for you, you'll find your balance of, like you said, it's nourishing
Yes.
for you to be
Mhm.
with people and interacting and in this space,
Yes.
and that feels good for your body. Um, and so you'll find that balance for you, and continue to learn learn what that is. That if you do baby step into quiet
Mhm.
more, what are those ways that that quiet feels okay?
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that invitation. Right. Listening to you, yeah, it felt like an invitation, like to just,
Mm-hmm.
bring. Of course, I meditate. I don't have a problem meditate. I can sit and stay quiet for a long time, and I can sleep for a long time too. I love sleeping, but not because I need the body needs. So, talk to me about the somatic work that you do. How do you approach that? People like, let's say, myself with complex PTSD that have
Mm-hmm.
been physically traumatized. Yeah, how would you work with them?
Yeah. So again, pacing it differently for everybody. It takes the relationship building, and that, like you said, creating safety in a space, not just, having the space be what it needs to be for the client in the way that they need to receive it, whether they need to sit in a certain location, and kind of like learning to be able to say, like, I feel more comfortable sitting next to the door. Um, I know my
Yeah.
partner, when we first got together, couldn't sit with his back to a door,
Yeah.
because he had grown up in an environment where there was a lot of violence. And so, um, over time and space, that's shifted. And so
Yeah.
it's noticing what you need at any point in time, being able to name it and voice it. Like, it feels okay to touch right here, but if I touch my arm, that doesn't
Yes.
feel okay. And
Right.
like exploring together at the rate that's okay for, you know, you or anybody else, to say, this is my agency. And right now, that's off limits. But I am going to get curious about the why. And so we can
Mm.
take the time needed, um, to do that and to notice, practicing. I do a lot of self havening with clients, and
Yeah.
noticing
Yeah.
places where we can calm our nervous system within our experience by just working with little bits of touch that feel okay, whether or not it be, this is a place of support right underneath our shoulder.
Mm.
So, does it feel okay to touch a shoulder? You know, and noticing, is that one that is good for you, or is that not one that feels supportive for you? Is it a lighter touch that feels supportive, or is it a heavier touch? Is it
Yeah.
brushing, or is it a light scratch? Or, like, how do you like to receive touch, especially when you haven't
Mm.
received
Yeah.
touch on your terms?
Yeah. So I know you also do EMDR. You work with the EMDR,
Mhm,
mindfulness, as we mentioned,
mhm,
attachment-based relational lens. We come from that approach too of attachment-based,
mhm.
interesting, and then holistic and integrative. Did I miss anything, Megan?
Very much a relational approach, in all of these types of modalities that are available. They integrate so well together.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do EMDR without noticing the body and noticing that
Mm.
connection, that mind body experience. I don't think you can do any trauma processing without mindfulness. So they all really integrate together, but that relational piece, especially because most of my clients do have complex PTSD. Um,
Mm.
Not
Yeah.
all, but a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot have had a lot of loss, like sudden loss and birth trauma and other
Ah,
things that
yeah.
are really impactful to their everyday experience. And so having these different modalities that work so well together to open up that neural network
Right.
at the pace that feels good, to release some of that stuff. That early attachment work is really a love of mine, and
Ah,
it's really quite fascinating to watch. What we don't have words for, what we don't have images for or memories for,
mm.
there are felt senses in those spaces. And if we allow that felt sense to come through
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
with that dual awareness and support, to process through whatever that experience was, it can just settle everything to a different level where you can have more and more access to that inner truth, that knowing, that balance, that feeling of like, this feels all right. This feels like homeostasis. This feels
Right.
like I am connected to my inner wisdom, my highest truth.
Yes. Wow. It's not love about that. Just
Mm-hmm.
feeling the feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have heard a phrase recently that kind of reflects that too, that wisdom, being responsible for what we are not responsible for. And I was traumatized at a very young age without being conscious, aware of the experience. So the body
Mm-hmm.
mind interpreted in a certain way. And that feeling, it's here. It never left me.
Yeah.
So in my case, I have been doing those work with dreams, with the way the reoccurring dreams. Some of them went
Mm-hmm.
away and some of them keep coming back. But now they have a different, they look different. They look much softer. Yeah, they are not scaring me anymore as they used to. Now it's less scary.
Good.
Would that help? EMDR, it's something that
Yeah. So what EMDR does is it can take that felt sense and allow, we can light up that neural network with what the things that you do know, the emotions that are present when you feel it, the sensations that are there. And you're not necessarily going to get a picture, of what
right.
happens, but you'll notice that when you recall that, whatever you're working on, whatever the target is, once it's been worked through, that the sensations in your body are neutral
Yeah.
or close to neutral.
Yeah.
The message that you tell yourself about that experience shifts
Yeah.
as you are able to metabolize your brain, like our brain, right? If we get out of the way, our brain has a natural healing process that is so cool to watch. So it's our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain offline more, right? And
Yeah.
allowing that natural healing when we light up those circumstances that around that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wow, it sounds amazing. See, EMDR, it's I have interviewed so many people about it, and it always has kind of resonated with me. So it's wonderful to know that, you and so many other people out there available to help us in that regard. So we're almost at the end, and I want to mention your services. So services at intentional healing counseling and coaching in your website. I'll have there too here on this video interview is intentionalhealingmn.com. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the website and the services. Oh, you have so many services because you also work with your husband, Charles, your partner, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
So individual therapy and trauma therapy, EMDR intensive program, EMDR early attachment trauma, EMDR for babies and toddlers, EMDR for birth trauma and perinatal mental health. You also work with anxiety treatment, grief therapy, two on two couples therapy and coaching, men's mindfulness coaching, men's health and wellness coaching, men's trauma and resiliency coaching, men's wilderness coaching. Did I miss anything, Megan?
No, I think you got it all.
Yes, so everything's here. And I have to say that again. I love the fact that, you work with Charles and both of you going through this work, helping yourselves and others, and doing this from your home too, like open the doors of your home with intentional healing, create intentional space, bringing mindfulness, creativity into the program. It's just really heartfelt.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful what you do. At the end, would you like to add to say anything, Meg, that you left unsaid?
Yeah, I think, one, sometimes we think that therapy is only if there's like big, huge things going on in our lives. And there are so many different ways that we can notice where we are feeling extra stress or we feel stuck, where we could absolutely benefit from connection with another human being, and some tools in our toolbox. And there are so many ways to do that. So I just want to highlight just the totality of kind of the integrative approach of whether that's body work through massage that feels good to you. And there's so many different kinds of massage um, from deep tissue to cranial sacral to, all different kinds. And so from acupuncture to spiritual healing with that as is the sole focus. Like there are so many different ways that we can notice where support would feel good. And I want to normalize that the human experience is that we are wounded, in different ways, and we are all stuck in different ways. So just bringing focus of mental health, mental wellness as like this is how we care for ourselves, just like we go to the doctor. We also, we check in with ourselves. We learn how to check in with ourselves, how to be present with ourselves in ways that feel like they're moving us forward towards growth.
It's just beautiful. I love how you just bring yourself, you know, to it. Like this conversation, we had this conversation before, and it's still like very much, you being present to you and being
Mhm.
present to what is here. So thank
Yeah,
you
thank
for
you.
being this inspiration. Oh
I appreciate what
my
you
God.
do in bringing just all different kinds of messages and healing modalities and experiences together to for the greater good.
Yes,
So thank
right.
you for
That's
that.
it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Megan.
Mhm.
So you take care of your beautiful self for now, and we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again. Bye for now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye.